Hello, Thought Roomies, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Hallie Rose. If you are new here, hell yeah, welcome. We're so glad to have you here as part of our community. And if you've been here for some time, thank you so much for continuing to listen. You guys are amazing. I've recently been watching the numbers of the episodes just go up in downloads and been watching the social media kind of have a burst of new life into it. And that is undoubtedly because of all of you sharing these episodes with people that you love, spreading these messages and these amazingly cool stories across our planet. So thank you so much for contributing to co-creating a beautiful world with us. I'm currently still in Eastern Canada, and as I look out my window and record this, there are just bright bolts of vibrant color ripping through all the trees around me, orange and red and magnificent pinks. And where I am currently in the province of New Brunswick in Eastern Canada, they are pretty famous for their beautiful autumn season and the vibrant array of leaves that we see. And so this has got me thinking a lot about the idea of fall or autumn and shedding and releasing. And in that, I've been thinking a lot about other things that shed or transform or release. If you get my newsletter, you probably saw me write about caterpillars liquefying before they become butterflies. And today I was thinking a lot about snakes and snakes shedding their skin. And I wrote something today that, a snake does not resist the shedding of its layers, just in the same way that the trees do not resist the shedding of their leaves. And in this same way, it is at least my goal that we too can surrender to our own becoming. And I really like that. That's very poignant for me. Again, if you've been listening along to my story and following on social media, this year has been a year of healing. And healing can be really hard and messy, and there can be a lot of resistance. So I'm trying to emulate the leaves and the snake and all of these things in nature that innately know when it's time to let go. So today we have a tale of surrendering to her own becoming by my beautiful friend, Melissa Stangl. And Melissa is the co-founder of Soltara Healing Center in Costa Rica with our other friend, Daniel Cleland. I have such deep respect for Melissa. She is an incredibly wise woman. In this episode, you'll hear her tell her story about getting a background in engineering and coming from this very scientific mindset. And she tells a beautiful story about a Reddit post and a synchronistical journey and a leap of faith and surrendering to the direction that she felt life was pulling her in. Now she has become such a beautiful bridge, and this is what we talk about in this episode, is bridging the gap between science and sort of like a reductive materialism standpoint and that mystical realm of the spirit. This episode is really special to me because it is the very last one of the Soltara Ayahuasca series that I recorded down at Soltara Healing Center. And I did a couple of those episodes after with people I met around the world who had actually been down to Soltara too. There were 13 episodes total as a part of this series. And I was counting that up this morning. I thought, wow, that is so interesting because I did a total of 13 ceremonies at Soltara last year. So the place is very near and dear to my heart. And it feels like such a perfect way to finish the series with Soltara's very own Melissa Stangl. If you are interested in learning more about Soltara, you can go to soltara.co/thoughtroom. And if you punch in the code ThoughtRoom, all one word, at the checkout, you can get a $200 discount on any plant medicine retreat, any ayahuasca retreat down at Soltara Healing Center. So I'm really excited to present this. And without further ado, my friends, let's step into the thought room with Melissa Stangl. Melissa Stangl, welcome to the Thought Room. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me.
This feels so perfect. And I reached out to you a few days ago and said, I really want to finish my time here and this series here at Soltara by speaking with you because, well, for one, you're one of the co-founders of this miraculous place. And first off, I just want to say I'm so deeply grateful for the opportunity to be here and be a part of this team and see what you and Dan, the other owner, has created, and get to bear witness to the people who are coming through and their incredible stories of healing and personal transformation. It has been my absolute honor to be here.
So thank you so much for coming. It's been just such a joy having you here. And thank you as well for documenting these amazing stories. It's like the most beautiful and humbling thing to be able to watch all of these people come here and show up and do this insane work that is so hard. And so to be able to give them voice and have a chance to share it with the world and maybe help others, thank you. It's been really wonderful having you here.
Thank you. Yeah. So we're sitting here right now on this beautiful veranda overlooking the ocean. The birds are chirping, the sun is going down, and we're just admiring these beautiful grounds that you've been such a part in creating. And we were sitting here just talking about things, and you were like, we better turn the mics on because, we just wanted to dive right in. And so here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are.
It's definitely been, it sounds like it's been quite the journey so far for you. And I was really resonating with just so much of what you were saying about the journey back home, in a way, the journey to self-love. And I think it really struck a chord, some of what you were sharing about how you were, if you don't mind me sharing, about how you were afraid of even putting your voice out there because you didn't want people to think that, you loved yourself so much to start a podcast. Yeah. And I just felt such a deep resonance with that fear. And then also taking a step back and being like, well, listen to the way you say that. Like, why would anyone be afraid of loving themselves enough to do something in the world, And I get it because that's been such a huge part of my journey too, and part of this, part of my work in this has really been overcoming a lot of fear of seeming like too much. And I've been working in this field for a little while now. And originally, I come from a very staunch atheist background. I was raised Roman Catholic, so I swung the pendulum in the other way and just went completely to that paradigm, and was very much in the science world. I have a master's in engineering, and I was in the lab. And so I kind of come from that whole world and very rigid scientific mindset. And coming into this world of spirituality and coming into my own path of spirituality has been a really interesting journey, because a lot of the community that I had in my previous life, if you will, was very judgmental of spirituality. And I even remember some of my friends before I went to Peru for the first time kind of saying some things that were very judgmental in terms of, oh, I don't want you to like go and become this neo-hippie bullshit, person. And that really blocked me for a long time. And I was so afraid of becoming that person that people, that I would then judge myself for, or that other people might judge me for, or, seeing the way that people can almost use their spirituality as a way to put themselves above other people, and so both ways, putting myself on a pedestal or having someone else be on a pedestal, both of them blocked me a lot. And that's been a real journey, because it's been this huge obstruction to just loving myself for a really long time. So I really resonate with that, because it's not easy to kind of do away with everyone else's judgments, which integrate into your own being, and you can internalize, and it can take a long time to break out of those patterns.
Absolutely. And I think I will be a work in progress until my very moment of demise.
It's never ending.
Yeah.
Every time you see a layer, there's another one beneath it.
Yeah, you're right.
It's so
oh my God,
funny.
it's like that commercial from probably dating myself, but that like how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
It's just turtles all the way down, isn't it?
It's just like, oh man.
No, it's funny. And sometimes people ask me like, well, you've done X number of ayahuasca ceremonies. Shouldn't you be enlightened by now? And I'm like, well, life still keeps happening. So there's definitely there's always just more that to learn and to uncover. And yeah, it's till the day we die, I think.
Absolutely. But yeah, I love this. I'm glad that you brought this up in this whole theme of self-love, because absolutely 100% that was thematic for me this week. And I feel like what I'm beginning to understand, which I had twisted in my head, which was, we get afraid of doing whatever our work is. We don't want to be too much, like you said. But what I'm starting to realize is it seems like it's actually a disservice to the world, an insult to the world, to keep yourself small, to not put your gifts out there, because perhaps you're the only one with that exact gift. So somebody else said this, I think it was actually Kyle Buller, who was from Psychedelics Today, who was a guest here. He was saying, what if Carl Jung didn't write his writings? What if Albert Einstein didn't decided not to do his stuff? What if they were just like, nah, I don't want to be too much. And everybody listening to this probably going, well, that's easy for him to say because he's Albert Einstein, but he really does have important stuff to say. No, that's the trick. I think we all have just as much to offer in our own way, and we just need to get out of our own way.
Yeah, and I also want to, I guess, point a little bit to when you first said, oh, Albert Einstein or Carl Jung, I was like, I can't picture them ever saying those things. And I do think that there is even something to be said for us being women and having a little bit of programming in that regard too. I know that so much of my material successes or, perceived achievements by external metrics were achieved within myself, in part because I leaned into the masculine energy and I was a go-getter and I, worked really hard and I proved myself capable, and so much of this work and what I've seen people come to really work on and heal, and so much of why I feel like the future is feminine, as we get more in touch with our emotions and empower that energy. There's a power in softness, and also there's this power in a really empowered woman. There's just something about that the world needs right now. And so you're totally right. I feel like there is this duty, as a woman to really, I think there's even a book called Lean In, right? To really lean into that. And empower there's actually, so I've been working with a coach for about 1.5 years now, and a lot of this fear got brought up in the time that I've been working with him about having too much of an ego, and like this word ego being this like bad thing in spirituality, right? And and something that I've really come to learn through his help and through working with the medicine is that it's not about getting rid of the ego. It's about integrating the ego. And it's actually about having a really empowered ego, because the ego is something that allows you to get things done in the world. It's the doer, right? It's also what enacts your boundaries and allows you to have healthy boundaries. If you have no ego, you have no boundaries. And I'm sure you can relate in terms of being a bit of a workaholic when you...
Me? No. I have no idea who you're talking about. You don't know me.
Gosh, and that's like so interesting, because when you try and put everyone else first, like we were just talking about, and, when you don't have an empowered ego, you don't have good boundaries. And all of a sudden you start putting yourself second, and then you can't give to the world your gifts at all. In fact, you're doing a really big disservice. And so really like finding that balance, approaching this medicine work in a grounded way where it's about connecting with the spirituality, and it's also about connecting with myself, and really allowing that to be okay.
Beautiful.
Easier said than done sometimes, though.
No kidding. So I would love to back up a little bit, if that's okay with you, and start with, I just was kind of having this little fantasy of you in my head whenever someone's like, oh, so what do you do? And you have to be like, yeah, okay. So, it's probably really difficult in some circles to describe that you co-founded an ayahuasca center.
It's awkward for sure.
Yeah, it's awkward. And you talked a little bit about your family background. And so, yeah, here you are, young and very successful, and running this thing that probably was nowhere on your map of what you thought you were going to be doing when you were studying engineering. So if you could take me through, I'd be really curious to know how you ended up on this cushion sitting here talking to me about this.
Yeah. My family is just as surprised as I am, and you are too. I've said to others in the past that I really feel like the plants just recruited me. They just kind of like, no, you're actually going this way. But yeah, so I guess to start, I was, as I mentioned, sort of raised in a Roman Catholic, very, ingrained in the external metrics of achievement given by society. My parents were baby boomers. And so it was like, yep, go to college, yep, get a good job, wait, have some fun, start a family, do the whole thing. And so I was very much a overachiever from when I was young. And I went to college and I graduated with a master's in biomedical engineering, and I felt very achieved and also very lost. And towards the end of my time in college getting my master's, I discovered marijuana. I was a very late bloomer. I was very against all, things that society deemed as bad. And so it actually was my gateway drug to psychedelics. And so thank you, cannabis. Sorry, dare. So I did try psilocybin mushrooms for the first time towards the end of college, and really opened me up to the idea that perhaps for me, atheism was just as much thinking that we know what the hell is going on out there as any fundamental Christianity that I rejected or any other, religion that I judged very hardcore because I was wounded. And I really became opened up to the fact that, maybe we actually have no idea how energy works. And maybe there is more to this reality than we can perceive. And so that was really cool, but I didn't really picture that having any sort of integral part in my life. But I was interested in learning more. And so it was right in between college and starting this job that was very much a corporate job, very much like was going to pay a lot of money and maybe teach me some good skills, but I was not looking forward to taking it at all. And I pretty much knew I was going to hate it. So in between graduating and starting that, I was really looking for something crazy to do and something different. And I was on the web forum Reddit. If you know Reddit, from the bowels of that place, my life has sprung forth. And I came across this post it was Dan Cleland, who's the current co-founder of Soltara. And he was just starting out doing these trips down in South America. And he basically had this post that was like, I take people into the jungle to work with ayahuasca with Peruvian shamans. Ask me anything. I was like, whoa, I got a lot of questions. And so I just started asking a bunch of questions, and he responded immediately and got a really good vibe and, just felt very like, okay, this is cool. Like he seems to know what he's doing. And I was like, it was very fascinating because the timing lined up perfectly where it was right in between those two time periods. And he was going on this June solstice journey.
What year was this?
2013. And so I was like, I think I need to go do this. Like, this is kind of what I've been looking for. And I was really interested. And my partner at the time was like, okay, so let me get this straight. You're going to go do drugs in the jungle with some dude you met on Reddit. And I was like, well, yeah, but I have a really good feeling about it. He was like, oh, cool. You have a good feeling about it. Like you're going to be sold into sex slavery.
Right.
And
yeah.
So I was just like, I don't know. Like, okay, like I'm going. And if you're so nervous, come with me. Let's go together. So he was like, okay, I guess that's my only option. I guess we're doing this. And so I went, and, it wasn't without its Latin American bumps, in the road. Our truck got stuck in the mud, and we had to commission a boat by a 12-year-old in the middle of the jungle so that we could make our first ceremony. And it was definitely an adventure. And so we actually get to the center where we are doing our ceremony like 2 hours before the ceremony starts. And we're like, oh, okay, this is happening. But it ended up being really, really powerful. I just felt such a deep gratitude and connection to all of the major people in my life. I'll never forget this first ceremony. It was like taking me through every person that was really important to me in my life, and just having this overwhelming sense of it's really about the people at the end of the day. And I just hadn't really felt that so deeply in my core, that connection. And that gratitude, and it was just really magical. And then the next ceremony was about creativity, and I went to all these different worlds that were all themed around a different color, and it was so cool. And so basically at the end of that trip, I told Dan, I was like, okay, I got to go take this shitty job, but like, let's keep in touch. I really love what you're doing here. And it was kind of cool because that trip was such a pivotal moment for him as well. He met another woman, the only other woman on that trip than I, and together they actually ended up going full time. They realized that this was a big success and they wanted to keep doing it. And so over the next year, they ran more trips. And then a year So in 2014, they ended up actually building a center of their own down in Peru. And then in 2015, I was hating this job exactly as much as I thought I would. And I was just asking for a really big change. I was going to move. I didn't care what, but I just needed something. And then I get in my inbox one day that Dan and Tatiana were looking for an operations manager. They were expanding. And I was like, whoa, that's what I'm doing now, but I hate it. And I wrote the easiest cover letter I've ever written in my entire life. I think it came out in like 20 minutes. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to get it, but like I have to apply. I would be remiss if I didn't. And then I get a message from Dan and he's like, okay, so read your cover letter. Do you understand that this means relocating to Iquitos, Peru for at least 1 year? And do you think that you can learn Spanish fast enough to converse and work with fast-talking, slang-using Peruvians? And I was like, yes, I understand, and give me 2 months. And he was like, okay. And I was like, okay, well, I got the job, so now I have to take it. And so, yeah, I quit. I learned Spanish. I sold my stuff and just moved to the jungle. And it was just the craziest decision I ever made. And my family my mom was super into it. And my dad was a little bit less into it. He was like, you're giving up your Ivy League degree to go do drugs in the jungle. Like, what are you doing? And, truth be told, I didn't know, but I had to try. And so I managed operations down there and got a chance to work with the medicine, work with the healers, do a lot of my own work, which was really instrumental in healing me from some difficult things that had happened in previous years, and got to really understand that this was a way that I could utilize my skills and passions and talents in a way that served the world and had meaning. So a couple years later, he ended up selling part of that center to another owner. And I didn't quite feel as aligned at that point with the new owner. And so Dan was actually searching around and happened to find, this was the first place where we are, Soltara. This is the first place that he found, like within 30 seconds of looking on the internet. And we ended up talking a little bit more. He went around and looked at a bunch of other places, but he was like, this is perfect to set up another center. If you are interested in, leaving that and want to found something, then, we could do it here. I really felt like Costa Rica was a bit of a bridge between worlds. And I really felt like my mission was to help be a bridge in this world, because I understood the science. I understood that mentality. I can relate to it. And, also going into this work, it's beyond what I thought was even possible. So wanting to help people get over that skepticism, because I've been there. And really the integration of all of that was Soltara, with a focus on integration, because that was a huge thing that I felt was lacking in what we were offering and what other centers were offering. And what was really needed in the community was helping people to take this crazy experience and actually make something of it in their lives.
Mm. Wow, what a powerful story.
I couldn't have made it up.
Right. And so the center's still relatively new, although it's growing super rapidly. How long has Soltara been open?
So we opened in a fairly magical way. It was exactly 5 years from the June solstice journey of 2013. So it was June solstice of 2018 that we opened the doors here.
Wow.
So that was pretty magical. And hugely, it was a fast track I was not prepared for.
Yeah, no doubt. You told me a really cool story once. I can't remember all the details of it, but surrounding choosing the name.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so opening this center was its own beast, and you can relate to my tendency towards perfectionism and attention to detail, right? So we had a bunch of names floating around, and I think we must have like had over almost 500 names that we were just like going through. And it was getting pretty close to the time when, you know, we were like, okay, well, if we need to pick a name. And we were dancing around it. We had like Solara, Sol Mara, which is like Mara is the sea and Sol is sun. So we were like, oh, like it's kind of like sea and sun. Ayamara, all these different things. And I was like frustrated because I was like, I don't know, like it feels like the perfect name is there and I just need to discover it. I just had this super conviction that it was there and I needed to uncover it. And so it was getting closer and closer. I was getting really frustrated. And one day I was just like looking at my computer and I think I was smoking a mapacho and I was just like, you know what? Maybe I just need to like let go of the idea of the perfect name. Maybe I just need to let go of it. And I was like, let go. And I looked up let go and it was Soltar. And then I typed in Soltara because I wanted the 3 syllables and it said to let go or release in the Google Translate. And I was like, if that's not the best lesson, whoa. Literally as soon as I let go of it, it appeared.
That doesn't seem familiar at all.
It's like, okay, the biggest lesson of my life.
Wow.
And that was when I knew that this was supposed to happen.
Wow.
And it's been this interesting guidepost of my entire journey in like coming to this place of actually having this be something that is successful and is working, has been this continuous process of surrender and letting go and knowing when to do that for my own health and well-being. And, you know, I worked myself into injury with trying to get this place up and running, which is like another big irony of this path for me, like hurting myself working for a healing center. So
yeah. And I remember you were like, I'm trying all this stuff with my shoulder and I'm like, you were getting massage and you were trying to rest it. And, you know, you had shared with me, I hope you don't mind me sharing, but you said, I tried all this work externally and then you can tell the rest, but what did it actually take for you to start, you know, healing that shoulder?
Oh my God, that has been, and before I say how, I'll say that it's also been a really cool shift for me because when I first got injured, and so basically poor posture, head forward, too much computer work, too much texting, you know, on the phone. I'm on every WhatsApp thread for the entire staff here. So it's just like nonstop, right? And so all of that caused this pinch nerve in my neck and causes like my arm to go numb. And if I don't have perfect posture or support, then I have a lot of pain in my shoulder. And I was working myself into the ground. And at first I was so angry at my body for like, I'm 29. Why can't you keep up with me? Like, come on, like, it's not like working right. And I'm not, you know, I just need to push harder. And I really, really had to, I had to let go of my attachment to my productivity, being so tied into my self-worth. And so the shift that happened, which I've only recently come to, which I'm so grateful for, is my body actually I'm grateful for this injury because it has taught me that my self-worth is not tied to my productivity and that my body is wiser than I am in teaching me this and forcing me to take breaks, forcing me to put myself first. I literally have to get a massage every week. Like if you had told me 3 years ago,
terrible.
I would have been like, wow, like that is just too much of a luxury, you know, like God forbid I do that. And so that's been really interesting because I hadn't realized how much it was ingrained in me that my own self-worth was tied into my achievements. And So decoupling that has been a really hard journey, but it has definitely borne its fruits. And at first I was trying all of these external things and sort of like doing what the chiropractor said, doing what the PT said, doing what the doctor said, and none of it was really working. And then one night I got into the pool, and there was this like really big bright moon, and I was just like looking at the moon, and I was just asking it what I should do. And it was so bright, and it was just like, I'm reflecting back to you. And so I sunk myself down into the pool, like up to my neck. And I just like closed my eyes, and I just went inside, and I tried to picture the nerves in my shoulder. And, in the water, everything is suspended. So there was no pain in the water, because it was like, you could like literally let go and have yourself be supported. And so I did that for like 2 hours, just like realigning myself like internally. And then I would get up a little bit out of the pool and feel how it settled. And then I would be like, okay, go back in, realign, and try and just like do it from the inside, basically.
You Joe Dispensa'd it.
I Joe Dispensa'd it. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And my headphones just fell.
That's okay. You got so excited. It happens. You're like Tom Cruise jumping off of my couch, and I'm Oprah.
I am so grateful to Joe Dispenza, because his book, You Are the Placebo, changed my life. And it's funny because I didn't actually apply those things, because I was so focused on like doing the things that I should do that should theoretically work to heal myself. And yeah, so finally doing that, I made more progress in one night than I had in 6 months.
Wow.
It was crazy. I woke up the next morning like without pain for the first time.
Isn't that amazing?
It's insane. It's insane. It's like truly this stuff works. In case I didn't believe it before.
Yeah, I know. And it's so funny. I keep falling into that pattern too. It could be the smallest thing. Like today I was sharing with you, I had a conversation with someone that I had been putting off for a long time. And we don't think things like that really, you feel funky, or stuff gets stored or whatever. But like after that conversation, I went and I had one of the best bowel movements of my entire life.
I'm telling you.
And then I crashed out. Like I had this nap that was like,
amazing.
you couldn't have woken me. I was dead to the world. And so my body was just like, oh, finally. We were like just wondering when she was going to offload that. And it's amazing how we do that all the time without even realizing it.
Oh my God, it's so true. My mom has this expression, yeah, issues live in your tissues. And seriously, it's going to be a chapter in my book someday.
That might even need to be the title for the podcast.
It's so
your
true.
Issues live in your tissues, man.
And to think that the mind-body connection is not a thing. Like, first of all, as Gabor says, it's scientifically impossible that there is no mind-body connection. But the level of depth and just how much of a two-way street it is the most powerful thing I've learned from this work. And not even, definitely within myself, but also seeing other people come through that have healed so many physical things within themselves because they got to the emotional root of it. And then the physical stuff just follows, like you're saying, because it's like a psychosomatic thing, and it comes from, stuck energy. And the healers will say the same thing. It's all stuck energy and energetic knots. And when you move that energy, it's like the physical follows because it's connected. It's all, intertwined.
Yeah, absolutely. So to connect back to your story now, it's like you've been on a number of podcasts now. You were just on Luke Story's podcast. You were just over in London, right? For the film premiere of the film that was shot here and with Brian Rose. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that was terrifying.
Yeah, because you're just like, I didn't sign up for any of this, probably. You just thought you were starting this medicine center. And
yeah, it's so funny because I have to give it to Dan because he is just one of those people that when he gets a vision, he just goes for it, like balls to the wall. And he's really taught me a lot about my own fear because I would never have had the balls to do it, the ovaries to do it. And so right when we opened, we decided before we opened that we weren't going to start something unless we had the guidance and ally of either Dennis McKenna or Gabor Mate. And we had been in connection with both of them since our time in Peru. At the time, Gabor was with Rhythmia. He was on their advisory board. So, but Dennis said yes. And so we were really excited to just have him on the board. Well, right before we open, Dennis contacts Dan and he says, so Brian Rose from London Real has been trying to drink ayahuasca with me for ages now, and he wants to film it. You guys are opening Soltara. Like, how about we come and do it there? And we were like, yeah, like, for sure.
Let me check my appointment book. Yes.
Which, was obviously a no-brainer. And also, we had no idea how this was going to work because, it would require essentially bringing them on during our only off week in the span of like the first 2 months that we opened. So we were determined to make it work because we felt that this was a really powerful opportunity and we really loved Brian and just felt like this was a really cool chance for him to go deeper, into his work as well and do it with Dennis and, all the things. So we made it work. And so we were like, okay, kind of forgot about it. And this was back in like maybe July 2018. And so it was beautiful because actually while Brian was here, he even shared a little bit of his experience while it was happening. And I just have to give a huge thanks to Brian because he really helped keep us alive in those early days. It was because he shared his experience and because he had such a profound experience here that he was able to, help people make a decision to come here. So that was really, really cool. But it kind of fell off the radar until just a few months ago when Brian was like, okay, we got the film. Like, we're going to have a world premiere in London. You guys should definitely come. And we were like, oh, yeah, right. Forgot about that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course we should come. And he was like, cool. It's going to be like red carpet. I'm going to have you guys stand up and blah, blah, blah. We were like, okay, I have been in the jungle for the last year. Like, let me remember how to put on a dress,
right.
like talk to people. No, but it was really beautiful. It went really well. And Dennis was there too. And then, Brian was super generous and invited us into his studio while we were there for the premiere. And
wow, the London Real studio.
And then he told me it was live while it was happening, right before it happened. He was like, yeah, so, it's just, we'll be doing this live. And I was like, oh my God, okay.
So don't fuck it up.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, well, all of this work I've been doing, I guess this will be the test. But it was really cool we really welled up with pride for Brian and just to have been there when he was here going through this work and doing this work, and then to watch the film and just have him share his story and make this film as he was sharing this story, and then see how he integrated his experience and actually helped to change the mission statement of his company, of London Real, and it helped him to find a little bit more balance with his family life. And it was just, it was something that he had a similar journey of really attaching his identity to his achievements and his productivity and, the success of his company and all of these things. And so it's like working through that, it was just so relatable. And it was just a great film. And it was really nice of him to invite us, and then it was actually even cooler to just talk to the people that were at the premiere afterwards and share stories with people and hear their stories and then go on and talk a little bit about Soltara and integration, which was a big topic for him and what we talked about on the I wouldn't call it a podcast, but yeah, on his show. That's just been such a huge part of this journey for me, and I really feel like that's something that is starting to get talked about more, which is great. It needs more attention because you can have these peak experiences, but if you don't do anything with them, then they just remain peak experiences, and this is only as good as what you do with it, really.
Absolutely. And I think that that's been a theme of many of the guests coming and sharing their stories on this podcast from here. I know Dennis talked about it. I know Dorian Yates talked about it. I know Kyle Buller was talking about it. And they were all just applauding the integration program that you've put into place here at Soltara because, again, going back to you as the bridge, and even Soltara as an experience as the bridge between this traditional medicine and the Western world. And I think that that's something that the center has been able to do really well because I think it was Dorian who was talking about this. He was saying, we come from a Western world. We need integration that's geared toward the Western life.
Right, exactly. I think that was a huge piece of it for me because when you are in the communities of Shipibo or other indigenous people that work with, this medicine, they already have it integrated into their way of life. And so it's common so they don't offer like a separate integration, but it's already woven into their community. And, for us coming in from these worlds, we need to have that bridge because we don't think in the same terms. And, our spiritual connection tends to be different, than what they have. And so when we first opened, I was working with one of my best friends from college, Kendra Birdsall, and she and I collaborated, and we also worked with some clinical psychologists who have decades of experience also working with plant medicine. So really wanting to take the guidance of people that were, really professional in kind of both parts of this work. And Kendra took the lead on coming up with this book, which we call The Hero's Journal, which is a playoff of Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, creating this sort of psychological framework adapted to the ayahuasca experience. And so it was, the psychologists we worked with kind of helped us do this and structure it, but basically taking you through checking in with yourself, setting intentions, really grounding into the space, taking you through your ceremonies and shadow work and different tools for, working within the medicine space. We talk about spirals, which is, healing's not a straight line, coming back to the same thing again and again, but with like a deeper understanding and reframing, different tools that people can use, and then kind of like a build your own integration plan. So our hope is that, we're not here to tell anybody what to do or how to do it. It's basically trying to empower people to figure out what it is that works for them and offering different options. And so we have different workshops throughout the week, as kind of going through the book. And then afterwards, we have virtual integration circles. We have one-on-one support. We send out resources for 3 months for people after your retreat, kind of following the timeline of, okay, now you're coming out of the dieta. What does nutrition look like? And how do you check in with yourself? But so much of it is, it's integration's kind of a buzzword now a little bit. And people, who's an expert in it? What does integration mean? How do you do it? And so our kind of approach to that is, you're the expert of your own integration, and how you do it is, what is it that's going to work for you? Because ultimately it needs to be something that you're going to continue doing.
Yeah, the Hero's Journal
particularly the new version, because that's been fun to watch that evolve over time.
Yeah.
But I just want to say it's not just like a book, it's really, in some ways, it reminds me of like an adult coloring book because it's
yes, that was the hope.
Yes, well, you nailed it. Because, there are all these spots to kind of doodle and draw and spill your thoughts. And who did the artwork? Was it Kendra?
So Kendra basically put it all together, and she did some of the artwork. And then Sylvia Campbell, who's also our marketing director, so they're both artists by trade, right? So they, and then some other friends as well, kind of contributed. But it was cool because they are both artists. So that was crucial for their integration. And they were like, we don't want to just make it something where it's like a bunch of written prompts and it feels like homework and it's boring. We want to like have like calligraphy quotes in there and have art and just keep it really accessible and not too like, so, and the idea is you can do whatever you want with it. You can collage in it, you can rip it up, you can draw on it, keep it messy.
I just keep wanting to spiral back to this theme or this idea of the bridge, and this like the bridge between worlds and bridging gaps in understanding. And it's actually reminding me of an interview I did with another guest, Eric Godsey, who was here, and he told this beautiful story about his experience with ayahuasca here, doing that for the very first time, and how he had one evening that was very thematic surrounding sovereignty and being a king and what it means to be a king. And he shared this little anecdote about Mesopotamia and this tradition of every year on New Year's, the king would go, he would strip off all of his regalia, he would take off his crown, and he would basically be paraded into the streets, and he would almost bow down to the feet of the people and express the ways in which he had not been the ultimate king that year. Because the role of the king, as Eric described it to me, is to be the bridge between the people and the divine, whatever the divine is for you, I think. And I think that's something when we're looping back to self-love now, it's like, how can each one of us be the divine bridge between what our gifts are and the people? So I want to, pose to you, because I have so much admiration for a topic like this that can be pretty dense. There can be a lot of misinformation, a lot of criticism about it. I know I've even had anxiety talking about plant medicine and really going public with my little piece of it. I can't imagine what it's like, this being your job and your life. So I'd like to ask you, when you meet somebody who maybe doesn't have any understanding of what you do, or has heard a lot of hard or horror stories about what it is, how does one begin to gently, lovingly bridge the gap of understanding?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. And it's really, I just want to preface too by saying that it's really beautiful that you're drawn to that too, because I really feel like that is part of my mission or my purpose, is to help be a bridge, because I feel like I am able to really understand where people are coming from, and also be open-minded to learning, about different cultures and things, and trying to see. I was a middle child too, so it kind of goes pretty deep in terms of being in the middle of things. And part of what I feel like being a bridge is having this firm foot in both sides, right? And like a bridge has two sides, and so being rooted in both of them in order to bridge that gap. When it is hard to talk about it to people that maybe aren't familiar with it. To to be honest, I tend to not until their curiosity invokes it. I've really found that it's not really something that is in the nature of the medicine work to kind of go around putting it out there for people necessarily. Really just trying to live the lessons I've learned and, be an example of, what can be gained, I guess, from doing this work. I feel so privileged to have had the chance to do a lot of my own inner work in this. And all of the challenges of getting Soltara up and running have really taught me a lot and have helped me. It's like sometimes it's like you don't know what you don't know, but now I feel like I know a little more of what I don't know. And so like that's helpful at least. And so trying to kind of live that awareness has been the way that I've kind of learned to integrate the medicine into my life. And so, I really do wait for people to kind of draw it out of me. If they want to know more, then I'll of course answer more questions. And then when they do, or if they do, also just really meeting people where they are in terms of that, knowing what to kind of hold sacred to protect my own emotional safety and what to open up about. We talk a little in the meetings here too about discernment, and kind of knowing your audience so that you can meet them where they are and also maintain your own healthy boundaries. And so I think that's a part of it too, is just talking to them about what it is that they care about. And I can totally speak the language of like, yeah, I know this is crazy. This is totally crazy. Like I also can understand the skepticism. I can understand the hesitation and the fear because definitely, I think we can all relate to that coming into this work. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I like what you said about the discernment. And I have heard the facilitators here really beautifully stress that to people too in going home. And I don't think it's just about psychedelics. It really is like with anything that we do, you could be falling in love or you could be starting a new project and you go to tell someone about it and you're so excited and you're just like, oh, this is the best. Like, this is what happened to me or this is what I'm going to do. And if it's fresh, it's like a new seed and you're looking into the face of this person and you're projecting or hoping that they're just going to be as lit up about it as you are and they're not.
Right.
That can be like just taking a pair of garden scissors and snipping a little seedling and then you never get to grow it. So
Totally.
Yeah, it's hard to find that balance when we're excited about things and to know what to share and what to hold sacred, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, that's been interesting, kind of going back to this idea of boundaries again, like what, to have healthy boundaries, you have to know yourself and you have to love yourself in a way too, right? Like you have to know who you are and be okay with that, within. And that's so hard. It's such a journey. And especially when it's so fresh and so new and you want exactly like other people to really fill that with you. And it's like, it takes time. So you want to let that settle within yourself first and then share, if that's what you feel called to do or, however you want to meet people. But yeah, that's a huge part of it, like this emotional safety, because when you're just learning, that new connection to yourself, it's like you really want to keep that sacred because you want to build up that kingdom within yourself in a way, right?
Yeah, totally. I feel like you have such insight into probably what's some people are calling the psychedelic renaissance. And, there are all these laws changing around psychedelics, and people are using them more and more for healing. And I'm wondering, what is your perception of what's happening kind of on a global scale with this? What are you most prominently thinking about, excited about, concerned about from what you're seeing? Because I feel like you probably have more of a finger on the pulse of the trends and of the science and what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel and can see a lot of progress as most people, I think, are starting to see the research coming out, see this kind of these topics becoming a little bit more mainstream. I know that there is a certain feeling that this is a resurgence of a similar movement that happened in the 60s and 70s when LSD was first created, and psychedelics really became part of the mainstream. And for a lot of different reasons, that was crushed really quickly. And digging into that more, it's a very interesting mix of reasons why. But part of it was people becoming too cavalier about it and a little ungrounded in the way that they were using it. Part of it was this political movement and the way that it was tied into the anti-Vietnam War protests, and sort of it being this like anti-establishment, separate from society group of people, coalition that was building and gaining momentum. And there were political reasons why that was, not in favor of the establishment. And so there was a lot of bias and skewing of the stories, even as all of this research was coming out about how much it was helping really open up psychology and neuroscience. But, there were a few cases where set and setting were not heeded, and those gained a lot of notoriety and then were used by political forces to kind of squash the whole movement. And so it's actually really tragic. But through the work of MAPS and other specific institutions over the last 30 years, it's been, they've fought really, really hard to try and, one, undo the stigma, and two, get back on track in terms of research, because for so many years since then, it was basically like you were a pariah. You couldn't get any funding to do any of this research because it was so stigmatized. And so kind of working alongside, they were working those missions alongside each other. And, it's literally been within the last decade or so that's been sort of starting to come to the mainstream. So there's the research side of it, which I think their approach this time is much more grounded. They have better controls. They are really, doing it very diligently and studiously. And I really commend a lot of the institutions now for taking this more grounded approach and really data-driven, because that's the only way that, the quote-unquote establishment is going to accept it in the mainstream. And it's fair enough. We're a science-based society, and hopefully, and it's undeniable, the science. So now that that's starting to become more legitimized, that's happening. Another avenue that I think is coming through that is really powerful is the veterans.
You read my mind.
Yeah. So it's a bipartisan issue, right? I mean, no, Republicans and Democrats aren't, neither side is going to be like, don't help the veterans that we've torn in war. And so I think that that's actually a really personal issue for me. I have a military family on my dad's side. My grandfather on my dad's side was in World War II, and he actually played a pretty crucial role in the war. And he came back, and, I think he was he kept it to himself. And back then I think they called it shell shock, but he definitely had PTSD. And he actually ended up dying young of a brain aneurysm. And I can't help but wonder if he had had access to these types of healing modalities, like if that would have been different. I don't know. But there's just so many people out there that we've put in harm's way, and then they come back and we don't know how to help them, and we just don't help them. And we really fail them as a society and as a system. And so this is an avenue for people to find real healing. And then there's this aspect of this like lack of meaning and emptiness that I think much of this consumerist capitalist society is feeling. And I think us as millennials are really seeing that, you know, the American dream is kind of dying before our eyes. And there's not quite as much of a chance anymore that we're going to be as or more successful as our parents. And our parents enjoyed, maybe in a lot of ways, being cogs in the wheel because it was a very stable thing after the Great Depression and all of that. They found this stability in that. But I think our generation is looking for a little bit more meaning, and we've kind of lost that. And so trying to connect back to our own spirituality and deeper purpose in life has really piqued an interest in these more traditional medicines. And so you asked kind of like, what are you scared of? Part of my fear, and part of the reason that I think it's really important to be a bridge in this way and really try and ally with the indigenous people and communities that we've been working with, and really provide a way that we can kind of move forward together. My fear is that that element will be lost, the indigenous roots and the honoring of the sacred. And, you know, it's great that all of this science is happening, and you can't just put ayahuasca in a pill and expect it to have the same effect. And so, you know, so much of this work, as you know, is about the ritual, is about the songs that they sing and the tradition that it comes from, and their cosmovision, and, you know, what they understand to be true because they've been working with this, medicine for so many generations. I just don't want that to be lost. And so that was really important for us in bringing this medicine out of Peru, out of its home, that we, as much as we can, maintain that connection and, you know, work with healers who have been carrying this medicine for decades.
This brings up a question for me that's twofold. One is, I'm thinking of the conference that you attended recently, and maybe if you want to talk about what that was and what you learned from it in relation to this. And then if you could also touch on, for those listening who don't know why you can't just take ayahuasca and put it into a pill, in your opinion, can you speak about the Icaros? Can you speak about the ritual aspect of coming to do ayahuasca within the Shipibo tradition?
Yeah, so I did attend the Pioneers Conference in San Francisco in October, and they have it was their 30th year actually, and their tagline, it's hard to describe what the conference is because it covered so much ground, but their tagline is revolution from the heart of nature, and the word love backwards was underlined in revolution. And so I thought that was really powerful because it was basically, over half of their speakers were from indigenous from different indigenous territories, and there were many that were deeply connected to different traditions and different plant medicines, and so they were speaking a lot about the sacredness of ritual, of working with these plants as allies, of their connection to the earth. And of course, there was a lot of talk about climate change and just the way that we have completely ravaged the earth. And I cried, and there was, art and speeches, and I laughed. I really recommend anyone who has an interest in this work to check out what they do, because they work very closely with a lot of indigenous communities. And it was the first conference, to be honest with you. I've been to other psychedelic conferences and there's hardly any indigenous representation, which is crazy. Not even that many people of color, to be honest. And so it's kind of interesting, the psychedelic renaissance, because it does seem to be like ruled by a lot of older white men. But this wasn't that. And they were really cognizant of that. And so I was really happy to be a part of that. And I took a lot of it to heart and really feel very strongly about keeping the integrity of this work as much as possible, because it is, I would argue, more than half of the experience. Sometimes I'll go into ceremony and just not even drink and just receive the Icaros, the healing songs, because they actually believe, and I can feel it, that is really what's doing the healing. So the way the Shipibo healers that we work with work is, so ceremonies held in a large circular hut called a maloka, and it's held at night, and it's in the dark so that the vision space can open up. And it's usually smaller group sizes, so our maximum is 21 here. And what they believe is happening is they are drinking the ayahuasca to access the energetic field that pervades all things. So you can actually see, there's the visual representation of this energetic field in the Shipibo patterns on the tapestries that you'll see. It's kind of an iconic, different patterns, but that's sort of like the visual version. And then the audio version of that is the Icaros that they sing. And so it's really cool because a healer can look at a pattern and sing the Icaro, or they can hear the Icaro and, make the pattern that it comes. So they're one and the same. It's like visual sheet music. And so they believe that it's actually those songs that are the main conduits of the healing work. So if you picture them as like the head surgeon, all of the plant spirits that they work with are like the doctors underneath them. And through the conduit of song, they're able to call on their plant spirit allies or doctors to correct the energetic knots in a patient's body that they see by drinking the ayahuasca. So it kind of allows them to read the energy field, and then based on the master plants that they have worked with and apprenticed with to essentially build up their repertoire, then they channel those plants, based on what's needed, what they see, based on the intention of the patient and that interaction. And so in the journey to becoming a healer, it's a really long and arduous thing where they drink medicine and they clean themselves, and they sometimes go into isolation for weeks and months at a time, and they ingest a little bit of the particular master plant that they're looking to connect with. And by cleaning themselves enough, they become able to connect with the subtle energies of that plant. And if they do it for long enough, then sometimes the plant will gift them with a song. And then that becomes kind of part of their toolkit. So, the ayahuasca is kind of the way that they connect to all of these different master plant teachers. But they will do this with any number of master plants, from the Amazon. There's different ones that are meant to teach different things. And that's kind of like this path. And then it's essentially their toolkit that they employ during ceremony.
So powerful, and so much discipline and dedication.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
The more that I learn about, it's called dieting. We call it dieting. But for context, people who hear the word diet, like in Western culture, we think of like, going like not eating carbs. It's not like that.
Right.
It's like you said, it's they're ingesting, and jump in at any point to correct any of these facts, but they're ingesting a little bit of the plant or the tree. Maybe it's a tree that they're dieting with over the course of an extended period of time, a couple months, a month, or?
Yeah. And they try and clean themselves enough that they're able to really connect on an energetic level. So cleaning meaning like zero salt, zero fat, zero sugar, zero energetic exchanges with others, which is why they often go into isolation. No sex, no sexual or sensual activity with self or others. You're really trying to create this bubble of clean energy.
It's like, I almost visualize like trying to like titrate yourself down to the essence of whatever it is you're working with.
I can see that. Yeah.
So I don't know, anyone who's even water fasted can probably relate. If you just like water fast or dry fast for a couple of days, how sensitive you feel.
Yeah, you feel closer to spirit in a way. Yeah.
And it's like you kind of have that little sparkly feeling where, I don't know, your visual field looks a little bit different and your energy levels are different. It's to imagine dieting with these master plants over a longer period of time and having such a restrictive, food consumption. Sometimes it's just really something super bland, like they're eating almost nothing, just a little bit of like a plantain or some rice, or sometimes not even that. So, and I think that's important to highlight because especially, you mentioned this kind of like white spirituality movement. Everyone and their uncle seems to be a shaman. And I appreciate that here. You call them healers. We're not even using that word shaman because I think that there is so much charge around it. And like, what does it even mean now? You can buy yourself a feather that's appropriated and, like you're a shaman, I guess. So
yeah, it's even actually like a Serbian word, I think. Like they don't call themselves shamans. They use maestros or healers or doctors, really. It's I can appreciate that this medicine is spreading and that, there's no real such thing as like authentic, like people want to have like an authentic experience. And, that doesn't actually mean anything. In terms of tradition, tradition is also fluid and, we try and, help educate people that, it's not, you're never really going to have an authentic experience. We don't use that word. We don't even really use the word traditional, because if you're talking about traditional, you would be in, a very, and you would be, you would not have the support that you would really need, that most people would really need. You would be, in a hut somewhere, potentially, maybe with a bathroom, who knows? Like you wouldn't have a facilitator. That's just not, that's not really the way that we look at it. The authenticity comes from the integrity of the people that are doing the work, of the people that are holding the space, and, of your own intention for doing it too. And so I do think it's important that people just know what questions to ask, whether they choose to come here or wherever they go. It's really important that they know who's holding the container, how it's being held, where the medicine is coming from, and what kind of experience the person has holding that container. Who did they apprentice under? How long have they been holding ceremony? Where did they apprentice? What is the tradition or lineage that they are working in? And, so there's just like really a lot to consider. And so, ultimately it's up to people if they feel called to work with it in, whatever capacity they do. But we do really try and educate people in terms of seeking a safe experience, and then also one that's meaningful to them.
Wow. Thank you so much. I've certainly had my own very meaningful experience here for the last almost 12 weeks now.
Yeah.
And, just as we wrap it up, just opening it up to you one more time, if there's anything on your heart or anything from your personal experience working with the medicine that you feel called to share.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for being here and helping to give voice and platform to this work and to people who have these powerful stories. I mean, I guess it's just my hope that, as this movement progresses as people, really start to become more familiar with plant medicines, that, that the care and consideration is taken towards this idea of reciprocity. It's something that, I feel very strongly about, in being just so incredibly grateful to have been offered this path in my life, and, really trying to do what we can to work with the communities that we work with and give back to the earth, give back to the medicine, support sustainability, and provide education so that people can, know what questions to ask, and also maintaining the element of spirituality as psychedelics kind of progress, understanding the benefit of connecting to that spirituality and ritual, and that it's not just the psychedelic substance itself, that there's this more holistic view of what healing really means, that we do have physical bodies, mental bodies, emotional bodies, and spiritual bodies. And if we can address all of those things and connect to all of those things, that I think that's really what's going to help heal people on a more existential level. And then in connecting to that, it makes a lot more sense to, to be able to give back to the earth, to make offerings, to invite ritual, to connect to that level of the earth and of connection. And so, I guess I wasn't very familiar with this aspect of spirituality, but now that I've connected to it, I'm really grateful for that. And so, I guess helping to share that awareness, if people are called to it, to really invite that level of awareness and understanding in.
Perfect. Thank you. Very well said. Needs to be said for sure. So thanks again, Melissa, for sitting down with me. Thanks again for the opportunity to come here and be a part of the work that's been going on. And so much love, so much respect for you on so many levels, both personally and professionally.
Oh.
And looking forward to continuing to cultivate this friendship with you for a very long time and supporting the work that's going on here.
Oh, thanks, Hallie. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thanks to the plants for leading us here and putting us on this path. It's been a wild ride, so I'm really happy to have crossed your path.
Agreed. Thank you.